asked me to fill in as one of the interviewers. And so I'm really, really looking forward to being able to interview two people who've taught me so much. Both these individuals, especially during this time and season of a market shift that we've been going through, I've been able to see from afar, from up close, what the details of their success have been. And I love just seeing how they're continuing to press into a difficult time and make really great outcomes. And so we'll be having Tim Braheem as well jump on here in a few minutes. But to start off, we're going to be just introducing both of our speakers. And then from there, we'll dive into one story and then go into the other story. And guys, feel free to even add questions in here that I might be missing of one another scenarios if you would like. So first and foremost, we're going to have Eric share. So we'll have you introduce yourself first. Eric, tell us who you are, what is your marketplace, and a little bit about why you're excited to be on the call today and share what you're going to share.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Eric Bibel with Neal Home Loans. I'm in the Southern California market and incredibly excited to be here. I mean, Sosi, you framed it up so eloquently. We're in undoubtedly an interesting time, and being able to identify opportunity and really convey that message to our referral partners, but most importantly, our clients. It's quintessential because, back to the crux of it, deals are still being done, and we need to be the ones to provide those deals.
So well said. I love it. Kathryn, I know that you are no stranger here to Mortgage Coach, and most people who follow have learned so much from you already. But for those who haven't jumped on before, would you mind giving a little introduction of who you are and a little bit about what you're excited to share this morning?
Yeah, I'm Kathryn Pedersen, Cross Country Mortgage in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. We're a little market and love being in this crazy little market that we're in. And I think one thing that's been great over the last year is it's really brought out so much of just the basic skills that we all have. And it's kind of fun to get back to some of that. So I'm super excited to talk about some of that today with you guys today.
That's going to be so good. Tim Braheem just joined us. Tim, we were doing introductions for the interview. I know you need no introduction, but I just want to take a quick pause for anybody who doesn't know Tim, especially the newer generation. I know that anybody who's been in the industry more than 7 years has heard his name, has learned from his resources, and so on and so forth. But anybody who's newer into the industry, Tim, your resources might not be fully known. And so I just want to share from my perspective how life-changing your guidance to me, your coaching to me, everything that you have been able to expose me to, new ideas, being able to learn how to pivot, both in control of my own emotions and in control of what my unique value proposition is to my clientele, especially in shifting markets. I just want to share how impactful you've been to me. So if anybody doesn't know Tim, follow Tim, look at his L360 podcast. His stuff is stinking dope, like just amazing, amazing. The tried and true principles, the things you want to learn and jump more into. So Tim, if you'd like to say hi, feel free to, and then we'll jump into today's interviews.
Thank you so much, man, for the beautiful introduction. Eric, nice to see you. And Kathryn, it's nice to meet you for the first time, I believe. So I'm just happy to be along, and whatever I can do to help, I'm happy to do so.
I love it. Let's jump in then. And I better do this because Dave asked me to not forget. So before I forget, Dave is going to be sharing a 5-minute video from an amazing script aid. And so if you want to learn how to be specific in your word choice, how to make sure that it's impactful, Phil has been a really great resource already in the Mortgage Coach community. And so when you see Dave share, pay attention to it, listen to it, and dive in to see if it's something you want to take advantage of. And I can't encourage enough to do so, as I know Dave has shared so much of what he's learned, and I've seen the benefit as well in my own scripting. So we'll jump into our first interview, Eric Bibel. Eric, it is a crazy market. Things are feeling like they're burning all around us. And I've seen you just fly like a phoenix. And I've seen you specifically focus on something that you have trailblazed in my mind, and I'm following even myself on creating listings for your realtor partners. Can you share with us a little bit about what drove this first initial vision, and what are some of the pieces of execution that you'd like to be able to share with the community here?
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for having me. And Sosi, you're spot on. I mean, this market is very noisy, and it's very easy to get caught up in all that's happening and allow it to derail us. Something that I've noticed over really the last few years is inventory is the biggest pain point. And now we layer in what's occurred over the last year, mortgage interest rates rising at unprecedented levels, in a very, very short window, layer in the inventory crisis and consumers and borrowers fearful that, hey, I need to move, but that fear is now exacerbated by the fact that my future payment on the new property, not only more expensive home, but a higher interest rate. So in turn, where we already had an inventory pinch, people who need to move are now stuck in a position of where they feel as if they're trapped. So what I really put my focus in on with this support of you, Sosi, support of Tim, was looking at an angle to create inventory in an elevating interest rate environment. And here, this concept has really evolved over the last, I would say, few months, layering in the aspect that consumer debt is at effectively an all-time high, but simultaneously equity in individuals' homes has risen proportionally. So here, looking at opportunities to improve the clients' and families' blended debt ratio in the home, but also award the opportunity for them to purchase a new property. So I'm kind of backpedal here a little bit and kind of really talk through what concept we're kind of creating and taking to market and seeing success in. And it's every referral partner you get on the phone with, what is the number one pain point? Inventory.
Yeah.
Well, knowing that inventory is the biggest pain point right now, we also know simultaneously that during kind of the last 2-year boom in real estate, a lot of buyers have experienced a level of remorse with their purchase. And that remorse can be anywhere from, hey, we, moved too quickly. We purchased in a neighborhood we weren't super fond of. The home needed more work. We didn't get enough rooms. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So here, being able to identify, one, there is a need to move up. Layering in, though, that kind of fear that, hey, I one, don't have a place to go, but the real fear is my payment on the other side, if I do move into the home that I really want, is going to be much higher because interest rates are elevated. So that's really kind of, the crux of what we're evaluating. And ultimately, the secret sauce that we have for this with the wonderful tools at MortgageCoach are the ability to convey with numbers that payment on the new property isn't what the consumer is believing to be. Hey, it's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 more.
So I think it's really neat because what you've kind of shared, just even in the first little bit, if I heard it correctly, right, is there's been a fodder that is set up for the fuel, for the fire of making a move when it feels like you shouldn't, right? And so the three things, and guys, anybody who's listening here on the Zoom, let us know if you agree with these three things as far as what clients are facing. High amounts of credit card debt, which also create guilt, embarrassment, and so many other emotions. From there, fear of what the payment's going to be. So the fear of the unknown, not being able to truly feel like there's a responsibility in moving, right? You feel more responsible in staying. And then third, being in an area of remorse where they move so quickly the first time, now they regret it. And now there's even this aspect of, well, I don't want to make that mistake again. So obviously I'm going to default to feeling responsible, staying in my current mortgage payment. And then as well, I'm not going to tell anybody because I'm ashamed that my credit card debt is so high. That seems to be the fodder to the conversation you're having with your clientele, and what's fueled you to now look at your partners and say, your issue is listings. Let me show you how to create them. Is that all correct, or did I miss anything?
Spot on, Sosi. And that's, again, really in approaching these conversations, most importantly with the end user, those feelings are beyond true. There's guilt. One, hey, we've, racked up a tremendous amount of revolving debt. And two, I don't want to make the same mistake again, but there's, in there is undoubtedly a need for the family to move on to a better option in housing for the individual. So, again, going back to what you opened with, there's this time calls for going back to the basics and really leaning into the expertise as being an originator and an advisor, and being able to identify a solution that provides a positive outcome for our borrowers, and using, the tools, the resources that we have available to us to be able to convey that message is more critical now than it ever has been.
I love it. That's so good. So I know in our personal relationship, the beginning of this year was tough. You looked around, you surveyed, you found something to hunt after, and you are an executor. Like, one of the things I've loved about seeing how you work is that you will execute whatever you put your focus and energies on. You've now put your energies on this. What has been step one? What are some of the details that you've done to try to break in some success, and what success have you had so far?
So ultimately, kind of the starting point was getting this message out to our past clients, utilizing the tools and resources that we have available to us, really looking at HomeBot to identify individuals that purchased over the last few years as an opportunity to check in, say, how are things working for you? So really that was step one. And through that conversation, leaning in on some of the outside monitoring aspect, sales boomerang, in identifying some of the credit triggers, specifically around credit card balances, kind of marrying those two together to get in front of past clients. I also found that through this evolution of connecting with past clients, our referral partners are dying on the vine. I mean, again, the fact that there is absolutely no inventory in our market, how can we bring this concept to the greater cause, as they have such a robust database that we can get in front of to help further our message. So in my market, Southern California, we host a weekly, myself and one of my partners, Mark Robertson, we host a weekly pitch event. It's been going on for the last probably 5 years now. 50 to 60 realtors show up every week. We get a plug once a week, and there I have brought this out in front of the group of creating inventory in this environment as an opportunity to connect with those, prospective buyers as well. And layering in now this consumer debt aspect, the conversations have just compounded exponentially. I mean, we're meeting with, upwards of 5-6 new clients every other day to walk through this concept. And it is a tremendous amount of effort, work, connection, really listening, understanding what the client needs. But the outcome, I mean, what we've been able to accomplish this year alone, we're on pace to exceed what we did last year. From a production standpoint. So it is definitely there, but it requires a tremendous amount of input and energy.
I love it. That's awesome, man. So good to hear too. Is there a phrase, like a name for the consultation? Do you call it the equity analysis plan, or do you call it something else?
So referral partner, really the focus is creating inventory in an elevated rate environment. That is what we'll bring to our referral partners. For our clients, exactly, it's the equity analysis, and really focusing in on, and this is, relatively new, I would say, over the last 60 days, focusing in on the overall consumer debt and household cash flow. And this is something that obviously has been confirmed with a lot of the numbers that we're seeing come out in relative to credit card balances. But I personally noticed it on clients that we were engaging with for pre-approvals. Credit card balances across the board are higher than I have ever seen in my career. And really, having that information to talk through, hey, yes, the rate's higher, but what's maybe not put down the 20% you were thinking about, what's potentially pay off some of this, utilize the home. So really the evolution has been through just being on the streets, pounding the pavement, but also taking in the national data as well.
I love that. Now, before we go into seeing an example of all this, and even possibly hearing a testimony of what you've done in changing the life of one of these clients, because effectively, That's what you are positioning yourself as, right? People are drowning and you're literally throwing a lifesaver and helping them. But before we jump into that example, I'd love to hear, Tim, any questions on your end? Do you want to expand on anything else and add any coaching here for any of the viewers? And then Kathryn, if you have a question, feel free to pop in as well.
Well, ladies first for sure. Kathryn, what would you like to share, if anything? Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, I would just say, Eric, I think you hit everything on the head. It's right now we have a responsibility to be honest and forthcoming with our clients. And sometimes they don't even know the situation that they're in. So I love that you're pointing it out to them with visuals. And I'm super excited to see an example.
Absolutely.
So I have three things to share, and I'll first start by saying that, like, if we're talking about just a purely practical implementation of this strategy, which Eric's going to go ahead and give you a very specific example here in a moment, that probably the one that I'm familiar with, or maybe another one. What I really want to impart upon all of you is a phrase that I've been saying for close to half my life now, which is the truth is the easiest script. Okay, so we want to talk about scripting here for a minute, and how do we take an idea like what Eric is about to show you and utilize it in an effective way to get in front of more real estate agents, to have them be the conduit to get you in front of more prospective sellers that become buyers for you. And what I would suggest is just simply the truth. If you don't have a specific example like the one that Eric is about to give you, then use Eric's example. And the truth would sound like this. Hey, I'm really excited to share something with you. I was just on a national Zoom call, and there's a colleague in the mortgage industry, Eric Bibel, who's doing some really amazing things. And he shared something with me that is, I think, really powerful. I want to tell you the story of, because people love stories. So tell the story of this home buyer that was thinking that they were stuck in their home. And take notes on what Eric's about to share. Go back and watch this recording and tell that story to every realtor that you can. And then ask this question: who do you know who would benefit from hearing this story, that might then be compelled to list their home for sale, move up into a better situation, that you would want me to talk with? Okay, so that's the simple implementation of this, and it becomes just a numbers game. Is the more people you can talk to, that you can tell this example to, or you have one of your own, the better. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I want you to understand that you need to shift the paradigm to a different sell than what you're used to. Now, many of you perhaps have already done this, and those of you that have, like Eric, like Sosi, who I've talked to in great depth about this type of stuff over the last several months, are starting to have a lot of success with it. And you heard that Eric's on pace to have his best year ever, which is pretty amazing in a market like this. The old sell is rate. You need to move away from rate. If you're selling rate, you're going to lose, because, as Dave Savage has said to me in a dinner that we had a couple of weeks ago, people are at this stage not looking at their interest rate as a liability. They're looking at it as an asset. If you have a 2 3/4 or 3% interest rate, you're considering it to be an asset. So if you're trying to sell against an asset with an inferior product, you're going to lose. I want you to start thinking like a reverse mortgage loan originator. You see, a reverse mortgage loan originator doesn't sell rate, they sell lifestyle. They sell affordability. They sell a greater and happier life. And that's what's available in your new presentation, is to unpack with them their current situation in detail and to share with them how you can improve their life with a new strategy that maybe they haven't thought of, which leads me into the third point. People, and you may have heard me say this before in an interview that I did with Dave a couple of months ago, people make decisions based upon generally two different components. One is the financial component, the other is the emotional component. So it's really incumbent upon you to get under the hood with them and ask them about their current situation, and to be very careful and sensitive and empathic in doing so, because, as Sosi beautifully articulated, people do have shame around their current situation. So you have to be gentle with them. Like, you have to really set a safe container for conversation with them, to where they don't feel like something that they're divulging is something that they're going to be, you know, chastised for or criticized for or anything like that. And that can start with, hey, I'm experiencing a lot of my clients right now really could use some payment relief and some cash flow improvement as a result of these significant Fed hikes that have jacked interest rates up on credit cards and auto loans and home equity lines of credit to historic levels, at least over the last decade. I'd like to talk with you about some things that I've been able to do for my clients that have really changed their life, that have helped them in a very meaningful way. And then you can roll into that conversation, but you have to get them emotionally attached to what that next house will be for them. So the final point is this: some version of this qualifying question that I asked, that I wrote down, which is, describe for me what you would love and seek to have in your dream home. Okay. And get them to dream a little bit about, I want a backyard that has a swimming pool. I want that, that school district that I really want my kids to go to. There are people, frankly, if you don't dig under the hood, you don't know this, but there are people out there, you guys, that are paying for private school. And there's a public school that is highly rated, but they're not in that district. And if they were, they would be able to save, 20 grand a year on private school. I mean, there's all kinds of different stories and scenarios out there that you can uncover if you engage in the meaningful conversation. So that's what I would share. And I think, Sosi, you're moderating this, so take it from there. But I know that what Eric's going to share is going to be very powerful for people to hear about.
I love it. I think the best thing I can do here is show the proof in the pudding. So Eric, feel free to share your screen, show us an example. I can't wait to dive in. And Tim, great scripting. I'm sure it's going to be cut up. I know that I'm going to try to see if I cut some of that up and just share that too, because I think that lands so well.
Yeah, Tim, I mean, absolutely spot on, and really kind of leading into, what I'm about to share, the emotional connection and having the client really feel comfortable is critical for this to ultimately work. I mean, we have to be advisors in this role, but it is critical that we set an incredibly a safe container for the client to be, feel that they can take the necessary steps, let their guards down, and feel comfortable with the information we're going to share, because there is so much guilt in, a lot of what we're uncovering. Everyone knows not to do this, and then sometimes they feel they can't get out of it. So being able to provide that relief, that guidance is critical. So what I'm going to share here, this total cost analysis, let's do this. You guys can see this one, correct?
Yep.
Perfect. So these clients came to me, or I was connected with them. We helped them purchase back in 2018. They were living in a 2-bedroom. They had since then 2 children. Both the kids were living in one room. Simultaneously, they also incurred about $110,000 in revolving debt. And immediately in the connection was, yes, Eric, we've outgrown our home. We found a home that we like, but we're fearful that with mortgage rates where they are, moving into that next home, it's going to financially hurt us. So really going through kind of the discovery call, understanding the needs, the additional bedroom for both their children, more yard space. They were in a condo, wanted to move into a detached home, really started to understand the true need for the family. And then through that, once we started going deeper into the pre-approval and the approval aspect, uncovered that they had incurred over $100,000 in revolving debt. And they were just basically going to shelve it and use the equity from their departing residence to purchase the new home in an effort to keep the payment lower. And as we really started going through everything, yes, the rate was, over 3% higher than where they were. But once we, identified a path for them to pay off their existing obligations, put less down on the new home, we improved their cash flow month by month over $700, but then also released all of their debt. And when we started really evaluating the tax savings with the higher rate, the actual payment difference improvement into the new home with the higher rate was over $1,800 more in benefit to the client.
Wow.
These clients closed at the beginning of this month. I actually just met with them last night. They moved into their new home. Their kids came up, gave me a big hug, and they said, thank you for showing us that this was a reality. And here, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps sharing this information. They've introduced me to two of their closest friends that are in almost identical scenarios. I'm meeting with one tomorrow, one on Friday, and we're going to ultimately put in action the same plan. So what we're looking at here is, again, the total cost analysis, and at face value, $2,400 a month to $6,200 a month in payments. I know at first I started doing this analysis. Holy crap, you guys are right. We can't do this. This fundamentally does not work. But when we start looking at non-mortgage related debt, $4,400 a month in payments, and we move that over to the home and allowed them still to have some savings built up behind the scenes. They had no nest egg. Everything was tied up into the home. They walked away with an additional 20 grand out of the home to do the things that they wanted to do, and ultimately improve their cash flow by $702 month by month. Very real, massive impact in this family, and something that, I am more convicted in what we're doing now than I ever have been before. And the referral partner, I actually have a meeting with them in their office next Tuesday to bring this concept out to their entire firm. And like I said, it's taking on so much traction because there is so much need right now in this environment. And, back to Tim's point, rate right now is irrelevant. I mean, selling against, someone that is sitting in the 2s or the 3s, the consumer is trained that they made a smart decision with that interest rate and do not want to leave that. But there is so much more on the other side of it. Credit cards, with top tier credit cards, interest rates are in the 20s. If your score is sub 700, we're talking high 20s, possibly even 30%. So when we start looking at blended household ratio or blended interest rates for the household, that 3 or 2% interest rate is now closer to 8. And if we can present an opportunity to alleviate that kind of pain, the rest is in the books.
Love that. Eric, can you highlight real quick on the mortgage coach piece, just for those who are still learning how to be as savvy as you on it? Can you show where the estimated tax benefit is at, and any other highlights you use to specifically help your client navigate from, I think it's a bad idea, to holy crap, I'm going to list my house, I'm going to work with who you tell me to work with, and I'm going to move forward?
Absolutely. So the tax benefit here, and again, this is, developing through the conversation, through the approval. MortgageCoach shows the link for the current tax codes to be able to put into the TCA and the tax benefit here. And again, you've got to be very direct with how this is presented. This is not money that the client sees every single month. This folds into their overall tax liability. And the way that I present it is, we can do one of two things, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We can either go back to your employer and adjust our withholdings now to realize that net income today, or leave everything as is. And when you go to true up at the end of the year, complete your taxes, complete your filing, this number would represent what your tax reduction would be based on the mortgage interest deduction.
Love it. That's so beautiful. Is there anything else here from a tactical standpoint that you do to try to really drive it home for them? Because obviously you're emotionally navigating this and also helping them have logic to justify what they want to do.
No, and that's a great question. And it ultimately, it's a case by case basis. And I think it goes back to Tim's point. You have to really paint the picture for the client and get them emotionally invested. Here, just firing off the link for the TCA with no context behind it. Think about yourself as a consumer. You open this up and you see your mortgage payment right now, $2,400, and the new one, $6,200. And yes, we're paying off debt, and that's included in the analysis. But a consumer sees that and they're like, oh, heck no, I'm out. Peace. I'm good. We'll move on to something different. So really understanding, setting the tone, getting deep with the client up front is more critical now than it has ever been. I mean, our consultations were always on the heavier side, even during COVID and refi booms. I mean, they, historically ran, 30 to 45 minutes. Now it is not uncommon to have a upfront consultation, run an hour and a half to 2 hours, because we're really taking the time to digest the information, create a deeper connection with the client to be able to now advise and guide for what the end result would look like.
Love that. So good. Kathryn or Tim, anything you guys want to add in before we pivot? And Eric, I just want to say, even before I let anything else be shared here, dude, great job in
Thank you, man.
being so caring to your clientele, right? Like you literally spent the time, the energy, the knowledge to help somebody help themselves and change the future of their family. And really what we do, right, changes the lives of our grandchildren's children. And so the fact that you were helping people transfer equity from one asset to another, liberate themselves, have better cash flow, and be just enlightened to a new perspective, I think is really beautiful. So great job on that, man.
Thank you, bro. And man, I gotta, give kudos to you. You really helped, you and Tim both really help kind of take this concept to reality, help me sharpen my skills. So I'm into the group. This works, and really with refinement, diving in. I'm available if you have any questions. You're welcome to reach out. I would love to help bring this message to the greater cause, because there is such a need in market right now for it.
Beautiful. All right. Kathryn or Tim?
Kathryn, do you have any?
Tim's going to make me go first, so I'm going to go. I'm going to preempt that. So first, I just think it's so key that people sometimes don't think about their debt in those buckets. And they're like, well, this is my house and this is my debt. And they don't cross the two in their brains. So I think bringing those together is just so huge, because I do think that they don't sometimes know who to ask, because it's a really difficult question to ask, but we're getting access to that information. So I just love that it's pulling it all together into, hey, you have this situation. This is what's going on. Let's settle these worries. Let's work on this together. And it kind of, you have the ability to jump into their, like Tim said, their emotional piece and say, hey, I know that this is potentially keeping you up at night. Let's work on a solution to this that gets you everything that you want, all those dreams, including the house, but also that financial freedom piece. So great job. I love this. I took a bunch of notes.
Thank you.
Always a good sign when you're taking notes, for sure. I took some notes as well. So, okay, so I feel like the conversation is 90% of the way to the finish line, and the critical 10% is the one that we need to really cement this with, which is, okay, then after you do the loan for them, do they go back out and rack up a bunch of credit card debt? And I mean, I think if we're going to really talk about caring about people, it's a little bit of a tricky conversation, because you don't want to be parochial with them. You don't want them to feel like you're talking down to them, none of that. So I see an opportunity here, a tremendous one, in fact, for you, Eric, and for everybody, watching this, to go out and deliver this presentation to 2 or 3 financial planners, and to say, I want to interview you and understand how you handle your practice. Because one of the things that I want to do on every single one of these presentations at the end is share with this client that if we are to move forward, that I just want to make sure that I make an introduction to a real quality financial planner that can help them stay on track and manage their assets and their debt in an effective way. Whether they end up going, I wouldn't suggest you be heavy-handed with it. You're not requiring it, but you're making a strong recommendation. So now you have a tool to go out to CFPs and talk to them about. And if you say, well, I don't really know that many CFPs, okay, no problem. start calling your database and asking people if they have a great CFP that they revere and ask for the introduction. I mean, it's not that difficult to get introduced to a few financial planners through some accountants or through an insurance agent or through your clients. But that would be, I think, the right thing to do and strategically a good thing for your business. Eric, you mentioned the 2-hour, the 90-minute to 2-hour conversation. What I want to just hit on that real quick and say, that's the kind of a meaningful conversation that really cements and deepens a relationship. And if we want to really start to build a database of advocates, of an outside sales force of people who are going to talk you up, that's what a good 90-minute or 2-hour in-depth conversation could do. And what I'm certain of, bro, is that in a couple of years, you and I are going to be talking. You're going to be talking about how many referrals you're getting out of your database from these people, and you're already starting to see it. You have 2 appointments that were introduced by these people that you just put into a home. That's what's available, is to really develop these ambassadors in your database because you've made a meaningful impact in their life. So invest the time. If you look at it from an ROI perspective, don't think of the ROI just from this one loan that you're going to do. Think of it from the high probability of a bunch of future referrals and repeat customer business because you invested the time in this 90 to 120-minute conversation. And then the last thing is, I would say that make sure you're out there looking at the services that are available to where you can pull data on your database's credit card debt, because they're available out there. And we talked about this in Austin, just a few weeks ago when Burris spoke. I mean, there's some great sources to really understand, so you have your hit list, right? I mean, like if you have 1,000 people in your database, that's a big elephant to eat, and you can only eat it one bite at a time. And the more data you have, you can kind of query your database based upon, tier 1, these are the people I want to attack right now that have the greatest need and that I could help the most. So be strategic with it. That's my final point.
Spot on.
Love that. Now, before we just pivot and expand on Kathryn and your story today, I want to throw one more thing out. Eric, something I noticed was the tabs you had open. You had ChatGPT, you had MortgageCoach, you had Trust Engine, you had BombBomb, right? Like you literally have all the tools that allow you to continue to be modern and you could be relative, I think is the word I'm looking for. You could just relate to your audience really, really well. And so I love how you are going hyper-focused. Let's go fundamentals, advice-based. Let's teach people what they should have been taught previously, but now we get the privilege of doing it, and you're still doing it in a very modern way using all the tools that you have available. So kudos to that. Anybody that I see doing that, I always want to give a shout out. So great job there, man. Kathryn, excited to chat with you. Tim, I don't know if you know a lot about Kathryn's story, but Kathryn is the queen of Steamboat. She literally just owns that market, and she has done so well with past client retention, with value up front, with referral partners. I'm gonna let her share her own story, but I am a huge fan and I love seeing what she's created. And so I'm so excited, Kathryn, to just hear how you're doing in this market, what you're focused on in fundamentals, and what you're also innovating.
Great. So glad to be here. Thanks, Sosi. It's good to see you. And I think that so this market has been humbling for a lot of people, right? Including myself. And I think one of the things that I went back to was, okay, what are the most important things to me in my business? And to me, I have goals of, I want that client to learn something, to grow from the time I talk to them to the time they leave the office or we leave that Zoom call. So I kind of decided, hey, I've been speaking a lot. I've done CE classes forever in my community. And, I really want to be out there as a resource for people. So we've really dug into some of the class pieces. So just in the last, let's say 3 months, we've done Credit 101 for United Way here locally, Homebuyer 101 for United Way, done 2 chamber events, one on home buying, one on the market, and just, hey, what's going on with the real estate market right now? And just trying to get the word out, because I think that people are feeling a little bit overwhelmed and they don't know what's going on with things. And then we're also trying to build up our future home buyers so that they're in a position to kind of, move ahead with their home buying journey. And to me, I feel like if we have this information and we're not sharing it, we're really doing a disservice to the community. So those have been really my focus over the last, let's say 3 to 6 months, is really just digging into, hey, I'm here to help people. And that's kind of what I've always been about. And that's what I'm going to continue to be about.
I love that. The class piece, I think, is super interesting, right? Because it's one that becomes a great service to the community. But I think a lot of people just get lost on how to even start it, where to create the content, and how to, get that going. What has been your experience as you've established, obviously, multiple classes? What has been your experience of where you would encourage somebody to start? And then as well, if you want to share a little bit about what it's done for you and your business during this time, love to hear that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit of an evolution. So initially I started CE classes because I saw there was a gap in knowledge. So we had agents who were maybe telling clients things were a little bit off. And I thought, if I'm going to be in this community and lending in this community, I want us all to be telling the same message and relaying the same information every time. So I created classes and started doing that. And then from that, we created more. We got requests for classes. So some of it's just a muscle you build over time. And sometimes you just have to take a little bit of a leap to say, you know what, I'm going to teach a home buying 101 class on my own and just kind of see who shows up, and obviously do all the stuff to get people in the seats. But sometimes you just have to kind of take that leap a little bit. Really, we already know what we're talking about. So it's pretty easy. You can find a ton of things. You could ask ChatGPT, for example. But there's enough content out there that it's pretty easy to develop the class, and it's all the stuff we say every day anyway. So don't overthink it. Just say, great, I'm going to teach an hour class. If you do that enough, you start to just get more familiar with it. It got a little bit more advanced. These were 2-3 session classes, but it was great. They provided childcare, we had dinner. So it was really like structured content that was kind of built for them to get through the class and really come out with something really tangible to work on, especially in the credit class. So, but part of it too is being the one people ask, and so much of that is reputation. So this is one thing I love about Tim, is he is who he is, and really we have to be that way. So I'm the same way at home as I am at work, which is a little bit quirky and a little bit, whatever, but I'm the same person. And I really think that in a small town, it's a little weird because you can't mess up, and you can't, you really have to serve everybody really well, because that's things I did 10 years ago are now coming to fruition, or I'm meeting that client again, or I'm seeing that person again. And so relationships are just so important. So don't forget those.
I love that. And just to give a little context, can you share historically, how big is your town? What's your market share? Because I think even when I was like, oh, that sounds great. And then I was like, oh, wait, no. When I remember like what the context is, it's really impactful.
Yeah, so our county has less than 20,000, which is a really big county. We have about 12,000 in our town. It's a ski town, so we do have some outside people, but and then I do some stuff over in another town that's even smaller, that's about an hour away. So we're kind of, to give you a context of where the nearest Target is, because that's like, an actual shopping place is roughly 2 hours away, 2 hours from a Costco, 3 hours to a Sam's Club. So that kind of stuff. So we're kind of in the sticks a little bit with some of that stuff. So, but that's like, to give you a quick example, my daughter would be mortified, but she got into just a little fender bender, and she knew the person and I knew the person. And then the next day I ran into them at the coffee shop. So no damage, all good, but that's how small of a town it is.
Got it. And you are establishing for yourself a brand, especially right now in the time that things are shifting, right? It's a vacation area. Recession periods are causing, I'm assuming, and please correct me here, less people to buy vacation homes, potentially, depending on what streams of income they have. But I love how you're pivoting and focusing on your brand being known as the educator and teacher. And so one of the things I'd love to even understand is, if somebody is out there going, that's how I want to be known, right? Like, I want to be known as a person who people go to learn. how do you leverage that first event that you're doing? Are you leveraging your past clients and having them participate, and it's an event set for them? Are you just leveraging strangers off the street? Are you leveraging a realtor partner? What does that look like?
So for the initial classes, I did some on my own where I would just advertise them in the paper and my past clients, and I would tell everybody coming in, hey, I'm doing this class, that we go a little bit more in depth. But really, we got more pickup from when I partnered with an agent. They would invite all of their clients and prospects. And then I wouldn't invite any, because obviously that would be weird if I invited a different agent's client. So, and then we would continue from there on the marketing piece. But we would also do things like put it in the paper and put posters up and just do all the normal, hey, we're marketing this. The great thing with the United Way is they had a huge database, so they did most of the marketing. I pushed it a little bit and sent it out to some people, but it was really them bringing that in. CE classes, the board of realtors did that along with myself, getting those out to the realtors, which was great because I was able to, not have to focus as much on doing the marketing for it, but really focus on the content and then focus on the follow-up after, which is definitely the key.
I love that. Yeah, I want to definitely focus on those two here in the latter part, as far as what is the content, because that is one of the biggest hurdles people have. And then one of the ways that people justify many times, from what I've seen and how I've even justified not doing some of these activities in the past, has been, I'm not going to get a lot of business from it. But like you just shared, the follow-up is going to be the key of getting business from those activities you do. But before we get to those 2 points, looking at what you've created, CE classes are going, and if you could share too what the United Way is, I don't know what that is, so I'm just gonna ask it for clarity. But what are you getting attendance wise now? What are you hearing feedback from realtor partners? Are you seeing a depth of growth in that relationship? Are you getting more referrals from them, even outside of just what this event has produced for you as far as leads and follow up there?
So can I just interrupt and say that, man, what a testament to what a youngster you are that you don't know what the United Way is. Oh my God, you just made me feel so old, dude. What are you, 14?
That was a genuine question. I was like, should I ask? Should I not ask?
That's awesome. Thanks, Tim, because I was like, I don't even know how to explain it because everyone just knows. So it's a very, very large nonprofit. We here they do like a 20K a day. They support a lot of different nonprofits in town as well. And they're just like a staple nonprofit in the whole country. Tim, what am I missing?
Well, I know that they used to be the sponsor of this entity called the National Football League, as I recall. So, I mean, just to put it in perspective.
I usually watch football. Not...
That's funny, Sosi. Oh yeah, well, I didn't know that was, yeah. We should call them and tell them to work on marketing again. So, one of their initiatives is we have a huge affordable housing project coming up, and one of their initiatives is to make sure the community is ready for that project. So they're working 5 years in advance of that to say, what can we do to get the population ready to purchase potentially, or even to be a renter, or to put themselves in a better financial place. So they've also taught budgeting 101, investing 101. So they have a whole series. And so they kind of went out to instructors in the market to loop them in. And as far as the content, you asked a lot of questions, so let me know what I missed. So as far as the content goes, it depends a little bit on the time we have. So we had a lot more time with the United Way classes because we did a 3 series and each one was about 2 hours. So we had a lot of time with those students. But sometimes you might get an hour, and sometimes it might be 30 minutes in the case of my chamber event. So we're kind of going through something catchy, like 10 things you should be doing now to prepare to buy in the future, or here's 5 things you need to know about the real estate market today, or something like that, just so that we're going through those little topics and then really getting them involved in what we're talking about. So, and those are pretty easy to come up with. Obviously, on the longer format, we're going through things like credit. We did, here's how to pull your report and some things about credit in general. And then the next time we went through, they had their credit report in front of them and they were able to really review it and say, hey, here's the things I need to do, and create a homework list for themselves. And then we skipped a couple of weeks, and then we got with them again to kind of say, hey, as a class, what did you guys find out from that? How's your credit doing? What were you able to work on? And then here's kind of go forward tasks for you too. So it really kind of gave us that whole piece. So just to give you an example, as far as attendance, it depends. So on my CE classes, sometimes we'll get 30 agents in a room, and sometimes it's 6. It depends a little bit on the season, how busy they are. It's a win if I have more than 5, but honestly, I've done them with 1. And then for the home buyer class, I think we had, or the credit class, maybe we had 20. I think they capped the room at 30. So it was roughly in that range, but great engagement. As far as what it's done, people see that we teach those classes, and especially the CE, and they'll say, oh, I have a VA buyer. She's the expert on VA because she teaches the classes. And then clients are like, okay. So then I'm also not having to prove that I know what I'm doing, because the realtor has already been like, oh, it's like good to go. So that creates that expertise. But then also in the home buyer class, it's going to take a little bit to really see what that's done. And one thing I've learned is patience in your tracking. But to give you an example, roughly, this is a while ago, like 15 years ago, I did a in-home class for a friend of mine for her friends on credit. And every single person in that room has used me for a loan. So it does work, but you do have to follow up, and you have to be patient, because some of those people just weren't ready, and that's okay. So that does happen.
Before I hand it off to Tim for any coaching here, one of the things that I kind of love of how the conversation has flowed, right, is we're showing an example of, with Eric, the jumping in, creating listings now, but there's still this other aspect of future business that I think you're really hitting on that's really special, and that has taken me a lot of just thought process in the last 6 months to allow my energies to hyper focus on. And that's this part of just knowing that it's to how Tim has said it a lot of times, the person with the most friends wins, right? You're just collecting and making this positive impact, and you're gathering the data, and you're growing your database, and you're exposing yourself as far as the value proposition, the unique education pieces you can do to the databases of your realtors. And what it does is exactly what you shared, how right now you're seeing results, and people that you helped 10 years ago and things you did 10 years ago are coming full circle. You're setting yourself up for that next round of it, which I think is just amazing. And I've been really encouraged in that, because that's what I know I need to do, knowing that my career has been very short compared to others. I get to plant a seed now that grows into a successful tree later. And I don't think it's one that we market around. It doesn't sound like the sexiest thing to do, because it takes patience and doesn't come into fruition until later on. But I think it's super important.
Yeah.
Tim, anything on your end?
I actually want to ask Kathryn a question. So I know that there are a lot of people that feel, I think there's a stigma out there from what I've experienced, where a lot of people say, well, I'm not a speaker. I'm not someone who's a presenter. I mean, that's not my personality, or I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. Well, what I always remind everyone is that Barry Habib and Todd Duncan and Ryan Grant and whoever else you want to list off, they all started somewhere, right? I mean, they all, and they practice and they get better at it as they go. And I'd be curious as to what wisdom you might have for people listening that have never embarked upon this journey of, teaching in front of a small group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And what have you learned along the way that you think has made you effective at it?
Well, that's a great question. I think a few things. One, if you take the focus off of yourself and you focus on who's in front of you and how you can provide value to them, it makes me at least less nervous in that moment, because I'm willing to be uncomfortable to help somebody else. And I think just going into it that way can definitely help. But it does take some practice, and it does take some feedback and training and things like that. So one app I think I've told everybody about is Marco Polo, and that helps it's super silly and it's super simple, but it's helped me so much with a video and with speaking, because I send a video to multiple friends every day that are maybe in a different time zone. They can send me one back, but I get to see, oh, that sounded really weird when I said that. And you can kind of give yourself feedback. And it does make you comfortable with just that environment. But it takes a while. And I think the key is you're going to evaluate and you're going to be more critical of yourself than anybody else will be. And after you start to get a little bit of feedback of, oh my gosh, how did you do that? You're so good at speaking. And I'm like, I don't feel that. But you start to slowly take that in and realize, okay, from this chair, it's uncomfortable. From that chair, it's not.
Hey, Tim, do you know what Marco Polo is?
I do. So the score is now 1 me and 0 you, because you didn't know what the United Way was. Sorry. I also know what Telegram is, just so you know. Okay, so I think there was a question that Sosi asked you that was a really important question. By the way, Sosi, you're doing a fabulous job in moderating this call. Like, really great job, bro. He asked you the question about the follow-up, because to me that seems to be like the real key, because you can get in front of 14 people and do a really nice job, but a lot of people kind of let the fish wiggle off the hook, so to speak, by not having a strategy. What's your strategy on that? How do you first of all, at the end of your presentation, do you provide some type of a hook, meaning like, hey, if you want more information, email me and I could provide you with this? Is there some kind of a freebie that you give away, or to keep them engaged, and or what is your follow-up?
Yeah, so both at the credit class and the home buying class handed out something that said, hey, and by the way, the home buying class, I'd already heard from some people even before the class ended on setting up times to chat, but also handed something out that said, hey, how can I help you? Do you want to meet with me in a week? Do you want me to check back in with you in 3 months to see how things are going? 6 months, a year? What works best for you as far as the follow-up? And then of course, those go immediately in there. I send a follow-up email saying, hey, thanks for being at the class. I'm going to follow up with you in 3 months, see how things are going, but please reach out at any point before then. And then that's really helping start that conversation at that point. And then, gosh darn it, I will be following up. I have one of those today that I'm going to be following up with. So it's that's that system. But the CE classes, I think it's important to also answer that question a little bit, because when you're in a room with agents, you can kind of get that feeling on who's really going to jive with you and who kind of gets who is going to be a good referral partner, even if their business isn't there yet. And so it helps me kind of be a matchmaker for myself of saying, wow, I really want to focus in on that agent because I like what they're doing and I really like kind of what they're bringing to the class. So it helps me kind of narrow that down, and then I kind of prioritize them in my realtor follow-up as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you make. I would imagine that when you're presenting in front of, say, 15 people, if you're really paying attention, and it doesn't really take much at all, you can feel who's connected with you in the room, like who's really engaged with you, who's taking in the content, who's taking in notes, who's laughing at your jokes, who's smiling back. That's a really important clue as to who you want to first follow up with, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And also and that's the other piece that does make you feel more comfortable. You're getting that that feedback from people that's, oh yes, I am learning something. And you're exactly right. If I want agents who care about education, and they're going to be the ones at my classes, but then even beyond that, they're going to be the ones who are interested in learning.
That's a really interesting final point. Sorry, I'll toss it to you in a second, Sosi. I just want to cement something home. So I loved what you said earlier about how, like, you kind of have become known as an example, the VA specialist. So you just come pre-sold. It's like, oh, I have an expert on VA because you've been teaching it. So I just connected a dot here, which is that if somebody reveres education, i.e. the person that's in the room that's really present and taking in the content, that person also reveres the fact that you're educated. So they're your tribe, right? So like, that's going to be a clue that that's a person that you speak the same language with, you think the same way, you hold the same degree of importance in education. They're probably going to be a strong referral partner to you because they're into the same thing you're into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Sosi, over to you, bro.
Yeah, guys, top of the hour, but I do want to share one last piece here, especially with what we heard. I was on a Mortgage Coach video about a month and a half ago, maybe 3 months ago now. And one of the things that was shared on that video was everyone in this industry either doesn't know what to do or they know what to do and they're not doing it. And I think there's been a lot of distractions for us with our own shame because of the shifts. We feel like we got caught with our pants down, for lack of better illustration, because things move so fast on us. I know with Tim, he shared even on some of his videos, how this has really been, by definition, a traumatic experience for so many producers. And my hope this morning was to be able to show, if you are feeling that way, if you're in a place where emotionally you're just like, man, I don't really have a lot of hope right now. I hope these two encouragements help you go out and serve the families that you care for and see that there is so many individuals right now who need guidance and advice more than ever. And there's such a need in our business to take advantage of an opportunity where realtors want to co-teach alongside of us. Realtors want to find an education of hope and a lighthouse that guides them, as our friend Renee Rodriguez says, in this midst of really, crazy times. So I hope that that's what this morning did for you guys. One last thing I'll share, just because I felt in my own kind of soul convicted to do so this morning. I was thinking about the call. If you're a producer and you've never looked, if you're a producer and you've had a good amount of success and you want to look into a really great experience, I've never been on a trip better than the retreat I did in Costa Rica with Tim Braheem. This is not a pitch for him. He didn't ask me to do any of it, but I will just tell you, I was thinking about it this morning, and I even want to come to tears of how impactful it was to just who I am as a person inside, to myself and to my clients and to my family. And so check out his stuff, guys, because it's amazing. Also follow Eric, follow Kathryn. They're fantastic individuals, as you just saw. Guys, any last remarks before we end here?
Man, I just want to say thank you all for having me. And Sosi, to your point, Tim, man, your experience has truly changed how I show up for myself, how I show up for my clients. So, I mean, to Sosi's point, if you guys are looking for guidance, looking for support, I mean, Tim and his community, unreal, bar none.
Thank you so much. We have one spot available for the next group. So if you're interested, feel free to, you could just email me at tbraheem@gmail.com. So thank you guys. That's really nice of you. Unexpected and kind of you.
And hey, Sosi,
Yeah.
it's so good to spend time with you. And one thing I love about you is you're just pour into others and keep doing that. And it was so great to be here today. So thank you for including me.
You guys
Likewise.
both
It was nice
put
to
a
meet you.
massive smile and joy in my heart today. So
Yeah.
everyone out there, go out, make an impact, and we'll see you at the next one. Have a great day, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Bye.